So before that, let me just revise what we discussed yesterday. So in yesterday's session, we have discussed about the structure of the Linux OS. So this is the material I'll be sending you very shortly once you make a payment. So yesterday we discussed that this is the structure of the Linux OS. So because of this structure, Linux is secure. So in every operating system you have kernel, but in Linux along with the kernel you have shell also. You can just go through the yesterday's recording if you are not attended anybody the session. So we discuss in that shell what it will do. It will act like a command checker. So whenever we want to whenever we want to uh, do any task in the Linux through the command, first we need to open the terminal. So once we open the terminal, default we uses the shell. So which shell we are using? Bin bash. So what it will do? So it will check first that command is given by who is giving that command, normal user or the administrator. Administrator here is called root and it is also called super user. Then if the command is not correct, it will just show that command not found. If the command is proper, then what it will do? It will convert our command which is in high level language to binary, because machine never understand high level language. So it will change into binary. Then it will send to the kernel. Now kernel will is something like a brain of the operating system. So it will decide this task should be done by which particular hardware and software. Like in our body, whenever we do any task, we have in our body different parts. So different parts will do different work. So which work should be done by which part of the body will be decided and controlled and managed by brain. So same exactly, the Linux kernel is the something like a brain of the Linux operating system. So it will decide that particular task should be done by which particular hardware or the software. Once the task is done, the output will be in binary form. So the kernel will send it to the shell. The shell will convert that output from binary to high level and displays on the monitor. This is what makes. So in Linux, we don't have for the any file execute permission. Here the files are identified with symbols and alphabet. So we discussed yesterday. Yes, normal file symbol is hyphen, hidden file dot, and the alphabet for the block file B, link file L, socket file S. If it is a directory D, first character will be hyphen. If it is a file, D first character is D means directory. Pipe file P, special character this. So here in Linux you don't have any file, and this is the foundation course for doing any higher courses like AWS, DevOps, VMware, Oracle, Hadoop, yes, SAP, and we already twice time I explain you these are the topics which we are going to discuss through this Linux administration course. So today we'll focus on where exactly what data will be stored. So yesterday I shown you the structure of the Windows OS. So most of the servers in the world are working on Linux. Why? Because Linux structure is more secure, more you can say stable. Why? We will discuss today. So yesterday we discussed about the Windows structure. So in the Windows structure, like yesterday I told you overall how the Windows OS is in, structure is there, where exactly what data will be stored. So suppose this is my machine. On this I install the Windows OS. So this Windows OS in my machine will be there where in the C drive. Yesterday we discussed this, just I'm once again reviving it. The C drive contain many important folder. Out of that, which are the important, we'll discuss that. Like one of the important folder is Windows. So this Windows folder again contains subfolders like system32, drivers, log files, like this. And then another main folder is program file, which contain all installed applications. Program file which contain all installed applications. Then we have another main folder with the name users. Previously it used to be called document setting, but now user. So it contains one main subfolder with the name administrator. So the administrator created data will be stored. Administrator created data will be stored here. So as an administrator, whenever create any files and directory, where it will be stored? Under the C drive users administrator folder. So it contains administrator data. If you have normal users, so suppose I have U1, U2. So for each and every user with their name, one folder will be created. So the users data will be there in users folder. Under the users folder with their name. Now U1 data will be there in the U1 folder. For each and every user, one folder will be created with their name in users. So that particular user data will be there in that particular folder name. I hope you are understanding. So in this, the advantage is the OS is installed on a single drive. In Windows, the OS is installed in single drive. So the advantage of that is it is easy to operate. But disadvantage here, if one of the user folder get corrupted due to virus or any issue, so ultimately what it will do, it will affect the user folder, then which is there on the C drive. So C drive will get affected. Now the complete OS will get corrupted. So this is the biggest disadvantage in the Windows. This is one reason why most of the companies not preferring to use their server. First problem, structure. Second problem, the security is not good in Windows. Like in Windows, the security is there with firewall. That is not good as Linux. Second drawback. Third drawback, in Windows, every file will be having the execute permission. So if anybody sends some uh, program in the form of some virus, something, it will run. But in Linux, it will be not running because it is an unknown program and it will not have execute permission. And in Windows, if you install some important services, you have to restart the service. So when it is restarting, that service will be not available to the users. So it comes under downtime. So Windows OS will have more downtime. So compared to all these disadvantages, the Linux is most commonly used in the companies as a server because Linux, first of all, is more secure, very good security. Second, the Linux OS can be installed on multiple partition, which we'll be discussing. So Windows OS is installed on single partition, whereas Linux OS on multiple partitions. So in Linux, if any one of the OS folder get corrupted, it will not get complete OS will not get corrupted. So that is second advantage with Linux. Third advantage, in the Linux, the files will not get executed. If any unknown programs comes, it will not run because it doesn't have any execute permission unless until we run after checking. And if a user run the program, they can run here. But here, user will not have the execute permission for any file in Linux. So if a user folder here can get corrupted, but in Linux, not like that. And if it is get corrupted also, that user folder will be created one separate partition. So the OS will not get corrupted. Only one partition will get corrupted. And in Linux, we just restart the service. When we install any new services, we'll restart the service in Linux, not machine, which we have to do in Windows. So the downtime will be less in the Linux. So these are some of the important advantages of Linux. Because of that, most of the servers are working on Linux. Good security, less downtime. The OS structure is very safe and stable because Linux OS can be installed on multiple partitions. So these are the main reason why most of the servers are working on Linux. It may be not easy to operate, but as you practice it, it will become easier and easier. So now, before you start operating the Linux operating system, we should know the file system. So file system means where exactly what data will be stored. So this is the overall structure of the Linux. So Linux OS can be installed on multiple partitions, which we cannot do to the Windows. So here, first main point you have to remember in Linux, there is no drive letter concept. So when we install the Windows, where it will get installed? On C drive. So drive means collection of folders or directories. But as per the Linux installation or as per the Linux OS, the Linux OS will get installed on slash, which is a directory. So here the Linux OS will get installed on slash. It is not a drive, it is a directory. So slash is a directory. So it is similar to like C drive. In Windows, the OS get installed on C drive, whereas in Linux, the OS will get installed where? On slash, which is a directory. So this is a main directory. So the slash contain many subdirectories. Like C drive contain many folder. Here slash contain many subfolders like slash bin, slash proc, slash boot, slash root, slash dev, slash sbin, slash etc. So whichever folders are important, we can make separate partition. So in one partition we'll install the one partition will allocate for slash for Linux OS, and whichever folders are important as per our servers, that like slash home, we can make separate partitions, slash boot separate partition. So which we cannot do in Windows. So here if one of the OS folder get corrupted, that folder belong to which partition, that only will get affected without affecting the complete OS, which will happen in Windows. So this is very important advantage in Linux. And mostly we works with the Linux through command, so virus cannot enter. And the file will not be having execute permission to the user, so they cannot run the file. So it is more secure, and the security in Linux is same as Unix, because the Linux is designed using Unix. So in Unix you have very good security. The same security is there in Linux. So in Windows we have security firewall, but which is not as secure as compared to the Linux securities in the form of IP table, SC Linux, firewall. So extra securities are there in Windows. Sorry, extra securities are there in Linux compared to Windows. So these are the reasons why most of the servers in the world are working on Linux. Now, if you want to operate the Linux operating system, we should know where exactly what data will be stored. So this is the Linux structure. So if somebody asks when we install a Linux OS, where the Linux OS get installed means you have to say slash. So slash is a directory which is similar to C drive. So C drive contain many folders, slash contain many subfolder. So each and every subfolder contains certain specific things. So which data will be stored in which location? Like we know in Windows, where exactly what data will be stored. So same way in Linux also some we have under the slash many subfolders. So each and every subfolder contains specific data. So before we start working on the Linux operating system, we should be aware exactly where what data will be stored. Okay. So I have three files. One file for all the practical steps. One file for all the practical steps. This is the file I'll be sending you. In this, it contain all the practical steps from first day to last day, along with the links of the operating system. Everything is there in this file. So this file I'll be sending along with two other file where it contain the this is the one file in which all the practical steps there. And as for the material or the notes, I kept two file. One file for standalone theory, all this, and the another file here for the network administration theory part. So this practical along with the theory material I'll be sending you to on your mail ID. Okay. Once you make a payment, I yesterday got the confirmation that one of our friend has made the payment. So okay, 1 minute. I think you are from US. Yes, you have made the payment. Yes. So you can just ping to my mail ID. You note down this mail ID. This is my mail ID. So today itself I'll be sending you solo. I sorry, I cannot pronounce your properly your name. So you just ping to my mail ID. I'll be sending you this 3 file today itself. Okay. And rest of the people also try to make the payment as soon as possible. So today we'll be discussing the structure where exactly what data will be stored. Tomorrow we'll see how to install the Linux OS on multiple partition. And tomorrow onwards we'll start the practicals also. Okay. So let us concentrate now on exactly where exactly what data will be stored. So we are discussing now this structure. So one of the reason why the companies are using Linux, very good security, one advantage. Second advantage, when we install any new services as a Linux in server means which provides services. So we need to uh, periodically install some new services. So in Windows, if you install new services, generally what will happen? You have to restart the machine. When the production server restart, what happens? The server will be rebooting means the services will be not available during that time to the user. So it comes under downtime. So in Linux, whenever we add any new services, we'll never restart the machine. We'll just restart the service. So downtime will be very less. Security is good. In Linux, security is good. The structure of the Linux OS is very safe and secure because we can install the Linux OS on multiple partition, which you cannot do in Windows. Uh, can be installed. Windows OS can be installed on single partition. So the advantage with that is easy to operate, but disadvantage in Windows, one of the OS folder get corrupted, entire OS will get corrupted, which will not happen in Linux because in Linux we can install the Linux OS on multiple partition. So before we install the Linux OS, we should know where exactly what data will be stored that we are discussing under the file system. So this is the overall structure. So each and every directory contains some specific information that we are going to discuss now. So before that, you see this. This is the overall structure. So here slash, I'm telling you repeatedly, slash is a directory. So when we install the Windows OS, where the Windows OS will get installed on C drive, whereas in Linux, where the Linux OS will get installed on slash, which is called root directory. What is the name given to it? It is called top level directory or root directory, which is represented as forward slash. So this forward slash, which is called root directory, is you can compare to C drive in Windows. So this slash contain Linux OS in the form of many subfolder. Each and every subfolder will be created by default when we install the Linux OS. So whichever subfolder is important to that subfolder, we can allocate separate partition while doing the installation, so that if that folder get corrupted, that particular partition will get affected without affecting the complete OS. So this is another important advantage of Linux. That's why most of the servers are on Linux, which we cannot do in Windows. So each and every subfolder contains some specific information. What those information will be there, we will discuss one by one in detail. So before I proceed, please remember in Linux there is no there is no drive letter. So the Windows OS get installed on C drive, whereas the Linux OS will get installed on slash. So slash is called directory. The complete name of this is root directory. In Linux, if you want to understand in a simple way, you have to be clear about three things. Then rest of the things you can understand easily. Slash means it is a directory. What it is called? Root directory. Then you have to know root. Root is a user. Which user? When we use the word only root, root is a user. Which user? Super user, administrator. So the administrator name in Windows is administrator. In Linux, the administrator is called root. When we say root, root means user. Which user? Administrator user. Slash means directory which contain Linux OS. So this slash root, or sorry, slash, which is called root directory, contain Linux OS. It contains Linux OS, Linux operating system. Where the Linux operating system will get installed? On the slash. So slash is called root directory. And here when we use the word only root, means it is not a directory or subdirectory. It is a user. Root is a user. So the name of the administrator in Linux and Unix is root. That name you cannot change. So whenever you use the word root, it means we are talking about a administrator user. And slash root is a subdirectory. It is the subdirectory of the slash. So it is called home directory. It is called the home directory of root user. Home directory of root user. So root user created data in Windows. Where it will be stored? Administrator data will be stored where? In Windows. In C drive users folder administrator. In Linux, root data, root created files and directory will be stored where? In slash root. So under the user administrator folder, it's similar to like slash root. So slash root is similar to the administrator folder under user. Are you understanding? Concept will be same, only terminology will be different. So here administrator name is root. So root data will be stored where? In slash root. So if you understand these three things in Linux quite clearly, then you will not get confusion about the structure of the Linux OS. So slash is a root directory. Slash root is a subdirectory. It is a subdirectory which contain root user created data. So it is called home directory of root. Slash home is called the home directory. So whenever you log in as a root, which location you log in? To the slash root. Slash root is called home directory of root user. So slash root contain root user created data. So slash root contain root user created files and directory. So slash root contain root user created data. The data can be files and folder. Files and folder. So please try to understand this. If you are clear with these three things, I can proceed to the structure where exactly what data is there. So are you following, all of you?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, so I'll move to the next part. I'll move to the next part. Now we'll discuss where exactly what data will be stored. So now we'll discuss one by one. So when we install the Linux OS, where the Linux OS will get installed? On slash. So in Linux, the slash is called root directory. So slash is called the root directory. So root directory contain what? Root directory contain. When we say slash, it is a root directory. When you say root directory means we are talking about forward slash. So root directory contain Linux OS. So in Linux, the administrator name is what? Root. The administrator name is what? Root. So you can see here, Linux uses the tree. So Linux uses what? Which directory? Tree directory to manage files and directory as per the operating system. So here the complete operating system is stored in Linux where? In slash directory, which is called root file system or root directory. So this root directory contain many subdirectories. So before we start discussing about the subdirectory, you have to be very clear. When we say only root, means in Linux the administrator name is root. Okay. Now one of the important subdirectories slash root. So in the slash, it contains slash root. So slash root is the home directory of root user. So here, whenever administrator, that is root login, by default it will log into which location? Slash root. That's why it is called home directory of root user. root user. When we say root directory means we are talking about slash. When we are saying root means we are talking about the user. Which user? Administrator user. Now slash root means it is a subdirectory which contain root user created files and directory. So if somebody asks you in Linux, I log in as a root user and created some files and directory. By default, those root user created files and directory will be stored where? In slash root. So you have to remember like this. Slash root is the home directory of root user which contain root user created data and root user created files and data. Files and directory. That is called data. Data. So now this folder is similar to administrator folder under users folder. Now slash home. Next is the slash home. Slash home is the home directory for rest of the user. So if you have created some user, who can create the user? Administrator. So I have some user like U1, U2, U3 like this. So user one has logged in and created some files and directories. So where the U1 created data will be stored? In slash home. In slash home, one folder will be created with the name U1 with the username. Like in Windows, like in the Windows under the user folder for each and every user. For each and every user of the for each and every user with their name, one folder will be created in users folder. So that particular user data will be stored under that folder. Exactly same thing happens in Linux. So here all the users data will be available where? In place of username in Linux it is slash home. So for each and every user under slash home, a folder will be created with the username. So which user created which data? So all the users data will be stored where? In Linux in slash home. So a particular user created data will be stored where? On the particular folder of that user. That folder name will be same as username, which will be there in slash home. So slash home is the home directory for all the users. So in the slash home, for each and every user, one particular folder with their name will be there. U1. So if you have created, suppose Sai user, if you have created one user with the name Sai, so one folder will be created in slash home with the name Sai. So Sai created data will be there. Sai user created data will be there in Sai folder. Are you understand? If I'm the U1 user, so if I log in as a U1 user, so when the user is created with any name, where the users will be stored? In Linux in slash home. In Windows, users folder. Are you understanding? So users created data in Linux will be stored in slash home. So if you want to check a particular user data means you have to go to slash home, and inside the slash home that particular user uh, folder will be there with his name. You go there, so that particular user created data will be stored in that slash home slash that particular username. Whether I'm clear to you? Are you following? Please tell me, are you following what I'm trying to say? Okay, fine. So slash home is the home directory for rest of the user. So whenever a user in Linux create any files and directory as a user, where it will be stored? In slash home under that user folder name. Okay. So users data in Linux will be stored in slash home. So if you want to check one particular user data like U3 data, so you have to go to slash home slash user3. So for each and every user, one folder will be created with their name in slash home. So administrator data will be stored where? In Linux in slash root. Administrator name in Linux is root. So root data created in slash root. And rest of the users or all the users data will be stored in slash home with their username. So for with their username, one folder for each and every user with their folder name, or for each and every user, one folder will be created with their name. So that particular user data will be stored in slash home with their particular folder name. I hope you understood this point. So once you understand this, remaining things are easy. So slash contain Linux OS, slash root contain root user data, slash home is the home directory for all the rest of the user except root. All the rest of the user's home directory is slash home. So for each and every user, one subdirectory will be created with their name in the slash home. So slash home contain users created data. So each and every user data will be stored in slash home with their subdirectory folder. So the subdirectory name will be same as username. Okay. Now slash boot. So most important directory in Linux is slash as far the OS is concerned. Next important directory in Linux is slash boot. So the slash boot contain the bootable files along with the Linux kernel and bootloader. So slash boot contain three important things. So the most important part of the Linux operating system is Linux kernel. So where the Linux kernel will be present, if somebody asks you what you have to say, the Linux kernel will be present in slash boot directory. So slash boot directory contain Linux kernel, bootloader and bootable file. Through this, it will do the booting process. Booting process means loading of the OS. Loading of the OS. Suppose this is the slash boot directory is there. In this machine, you have installed the Linux OS. So whenever you switch on the machine, what happens in the background? Slash boot directory which contain Linux kernel, grub is called grand, gr means grand, u means unified, b means bootloader. So simply you can call this as a bootloader also. So the slash boot contain Linux kernel, bootloader and bootable files. So using these three things, what is the role of each and everything we'll discuss in booting process. So the booting process takes place in Linux through the slash boot directory. So slash boot directory contain Linux kernel, bootloader and bootable file. Through this, it will do the booting process. So booting process takes place in the Linux through slash boot directory. Booting process means we'll be discussing in complete one session, one day in the coming days. But today just remember booting process means loading of the OS. So whenever we install the OS, where the OS will be installed on the hard disk. So when we switch on the machine, what happens? The loading of the OS take place. The loading of the OS. The OS will get loaded from the loading of the OS take place from hard disk, that is called secondary storage, to primary storage, that is RAM. Then only once the OS get loaded from the hard disk to the RAM. So whenever you install any OS, where it will be stored on the desktop or the laptop or in our computer, when we install the OS, where it will be stored in the hard disk. So when we switch on the machine, the OS will get loaded from the hard disk to RAM. Then only you will get the login screen. Once the OS is loaded from hard disk to RAM, then you will get the login screen. So who will load the OS? Linux kernel, bootloader and bootable file. These three things which are present in the slash boot directory will load the OS. What is the role of bootloader? What is the role of grub? What is the role of the uh, Linux kernel? What is the role of the bootloader? What is the role of the bootable file in booting the OS? We'll be discussing in complete detail in the session called booting process. So today you just remember the slash boot directory, which is one of the subdirectory of slash contain Linux kernel, bootable file and bootloader. Through this, it will do the booting process. What is the specific role of each and every one in booting the or loading the OS? of the bootable file or bootloader and Linux kernel. What each of them will do during the booting process, we'll discuss in detail in that session, booting process. Today, just remember, booting process means loading of the OS from hard disk to RAM. So who will do this? Bootable file, bootloader, and Linux kernel. All these three things will do the booting process, which is present in /boot directory. So if this folder get corrupted, suppose /boot directory folder got corrupted due to any reason, if /boot directory is not working, so booting process will not take place. The OS will be there in the hard disk, but when we switch on the machine, when this bootloader get failed, when the /boot directory, get failed due to any reason, what happens once you switch on the machine? On the machine, you find this grub greater than. Black screen will appear, and on the monitor it will show grub greater than. It means your OS is there on hard disk, but your boot directory is not working. So the OS will not get loaded from hard disk to RAM, and you will not get the login screen. So you cannot able to log in with any user. So for this, what is the troubleshooting? You should have ISO image, or you should have the bootable DVD or bootable pen drive connect to the machine on which bootloader got or /boot directory got corrupted. The OS is there in that machine, but boot directory is not working. Means then you have to take a bootable pen drive. Nowadays nobody is using CD. Bootable pen drive, you take it, connect to the machine in which OS is got corrupted. Not OS, sorry, the /boot directory got corrupted. Then OS will be there, but it will not, we will not get the login screen, and we cannot able to log in with any user because the loading of the OS is not taking place. So in that scenario, what you have to do, in which machine the grub error you are getting, that machine we have to connect the bootable pen drive, then go to the rescue mode, just reinstall the boot directory without installing the OS, just reinstall the boot directory. So once the boot directory is working, it will load the OS with the help of Linux kernel, bootloader, and bootable file. It load the OS from the hard disk to RAM, and you will get the login screen. Okay. So / contain Linux OS /root user data. Who is root? Administrator. The administrator name in Linux and Unix is root. So root data will be stored in /root. All the users' home data will be stored in /home. /boot directory contain Linux kernel, bootloader, and bootable file through which it will do the booting process. If the boot directory get corrupted, means the OS will not get loaded, and you will see on the screen grub greater than. That is called grub error. So what is the solution for that? I told you, you have to connect the bootable pen drive. You connect the bootable pen drive, then go to the rescue mode, reinstall only boot directory, then booting will take place. The OS will get loaded from hard disk to RAM. Now next folder, subfolder is /bin. So /bin is called binary. It contains the commands which can be used or executed by any user. Like example, the command ls cat ping. So this command can be used by any user. So in the in the /bin directory, or it is a subdirectory of the /. So we should never say bin or boot or home, because these are the subdirectory of /. So we have to say compulsory / before the name, /root. If I don't say / before the name root, then that is a user. Which user? Administrator user. /root is a subdirectory which contains root user data. / means main directory of Linux operating system. That is called root directory. /root is called the home directory of root user. It contains root data. /home is the home directory of all users. So where all users data will be stored with their folder name. /boot contain bootable file, bootloader, and Linux kernel through which it will do the booting process. Now /bin called binary. What is the full form of bin? Binary. It contains list of commands We don't have to create or write the command. This will be there by default from the vendor. Vendor means whose OS you are using, CentOS, RHEL, Ubuntu, any OS. The vendor will create it. So it will have predefined command. So this command, so if you give correct command, that command will be executed through the shell. So whenever you give some command, if the command is correct, then only it will be executed. If you give some command which is not been given in the list, so you will get a message command not found. So command not found means you might be giving some command which might be not there, or you might be giving some wrong command. So /bin, which is called binary, contain list of commands which can be executed or used by any user. Then you have another folder with the name sbin, which is called system binary. Then we have another folder called sbin, which is called system binary. It contains list of commands which can be used only by root user. So whatever commands present in sbin can be used by whom? Can be used by whom? Only root user. So if a other user try to use, you will get the message access denied, permission denied. So all the commands which are there in sbin can be used by root. So now my question is, whatever commands present in bin folder, can the root user used? I'm asking you this question, can you reply, anybody? Whatever command present in bin, can the root user use? Yes. So it means you are understanding. So root can use any command, whether it is present in /bin or /sbin. Root will have maximum access. Root can use any command which is given in the sbin or bin. But if you write your own command, then it will say command not found. You cannot use your own command. Whatever command given by the vendor, that only we can use. So if the command is correct, the shell will check command is correct or not, and who is giving that command. If it is correct, it will go to the, in the background, it will go to the, it will convert that command into binary and send it to the kernel. Then kernel, it will happen fraction of second, like in like our brain, it does so much task within a fraction of second. So same, so it will go to the kernel, kernel will send it to the required hardware or software. It will decide this task should be done by which particular hardware or software. Then once it is been done, what happens? Once it has been done, the task is done, the kernel send the output which is in binary to the shell. Shell convert it back to the high level language and displays. So whatever commands present in the sbin, please remember sbin is called system binary. So whatever commands present in the sbin, those commands can be used by only one user. Who is that one user? Root user. And if any normal user other than root try to use the command which are there in the sbin, immediately you will find message access denied or permission denied. Okay, so we can check this once we install the OS tomorrow. Tomorrow onwards we'll start the practical. So today we are discussing the theory, all these things, and tomorrow we'll do the installation. Then next one is what? USR. USR full form, Unix system resource. So in whenever we install any application in Windows, .exe application, where it will be stored in program file. So same way, whenever we install in Linux the application, where the application will be stored in Linux? USR. So USR full form, Unix system resource. It contains the installed application, software or application, same like program file in Windows. So whenever we install any application in Windows, where it will be stored? In program file under C drive. So same way, whenever we install any application or software in Linux, where it will be stored? /USR. Remember this. Next one, /etc. So etc is called etc. It contains configuration file. It contains configuration file. So whenever we want to configure any server, we need to install the application. So once you install the application, that application will be stored in /usr, but that application create one file. That file is called configuration file. So those configuration file will be always stored in /etc. So it contains the local system configuration file for the host computer, such as user information, service startup files, configuration file for the common services whichever we are installing. So in Windows we have Windows registry. Similar to that in Linux we have /etc. So /etc full form etc., which contain configuration file, which contain the details or information like user information, service information, configuration file details. Next, /dev. /dev contain /dev is called devices. What is the full form of etc, etc.? What is the full form of dev? Devices. So devices give the hardware devices information. Software information will be stored in /usr in Linux. Hardware devices information will be stored where? In /dev. Like your hard disk. Hard disk comes under hardware. So if you want to check your hard disk, if you want to check your hard disk detail, what is the size of your hard disk, how many partition is created, so where you have to go? /dev. So /dev contain hardware devices information. So whatever hardware device attached to the system, that information will be available on /dev folder. /var. /var contain dynamic data. Dynamic data means variable data, such as the log files, cache memory, file generated during the software. Yes, I said this file I'll be sharing you along with total 3 files. One practical file, in this all practical steps are there, and the theory parts I made it 2 notes, one standalone, one network. So 3 files I'll be sending you. Is it okay? So you don't have to write anything. This I'll be sending you. Now /var contain variable data such as log file generated during software operation. Var full form variable. It contains variable data information such as log file, cache memory, file generated during software operation. Then lib means library. It contains shared library files that are required to boot the system. So lib contains library files, same like in Windows. Then /opt. So /opt is an empty directory which is used to install the other software which is not there in your OS. So the application which you are getting directly from your OS, if you install the application which you are getting from your OS, those application will be stored in /usr, remember. But sometime you need some application which might not be there with your OS. So that application you have to download from some third-party source like internet and install it. So third-party installed application will be stored where? In /opt. OPT stands for operational. Sorry, OPT stands for optional, not operational. Sorry. I repeat once again. OPT stands for optional. So it is an empty directory which is used to install the third-party installed application. Third party. Our inbuilt application will be stored in USR. Third-party application. Other software means third party, which is not there with your OS. Then /media. There is no abbreviation for this, simply called media. So media directory is used to access the removable storage devices. So I repeat, media directory is used to access the removable storage devices. Like when you connect pen drive, CD, floppy disk, or DVD. So best example is our USB pen drive. So when somebody connect the pen drive in Linux machine and ask you what is there in the pen drive, you just check and tell me. So where you have to go? When you connect the removable storage device, plug and play devices information in Linux will be stored where? Are the plug and play devices information can be accessed with the slash media directory. So slash media directory is a mount point. Mount point means access point to access the removable storage device, plug and play devices like USB, CD, DVD. Okay. Then MNT. MNT also there is no abbreviation for. So it is a empty directory which is used to access the partition, new partition. So in Windows, whenever you create any new partition, how do you access the new partition in Windows? Through the new drive letter like D drive, E drive, F drive. So in Linux, after the installation of your OS, can you create new partition? Yes. So when you create your new partition, the operating system given one empty directory or one empty directory will be created with the name MNT, which can be used to access our new partition. So in Windows, the partition will be accessed through drive letter. In Linux, the partition will be accessed with the directory. In Windows, the OS get installed on C drive. So in Windows, the things will be accessed through the drive letter. In Linux, when we install the Linux OS, the Linux OS get installed on directory. So in Linux, the things will be accessed with the directory. In Windows, the things will be accessed with drive letter. Here, the things will be accessed with directory. Remember this. So MNT is used to access the new partition. Then next one, TMP. TMP means what? Temporary file. So where the temporary files will be stored? In slash TMP. So our slash TMP store the system generated systems where the system stores the temporary file which user can access and write. Now lost but found directory. So this will be created once we access the directory. Once we access the partition with the directory. So once we are accessing the partition with the directory, that directory is called mounted directory. So suppose you have not created any partition. If you go to the MNT, nothing will be there, it is empty. But now you created one new partition. Now you mounted the new partition. Mounting means accessing now the new partition with the directory. So once you create a link to access the partition with directory, that is called mounting. Mounting is a process of accessing the partition with directory. So once you link the partition to with a directory, so inside the directory one folder will be created by default. So that indicate that inside the directory one folder will be created with the name lost plus found. So whenever you see inside the directory lost plus found directory, it means that directory is a mounted, that is a mounted directory. Inside which directory you are seeing lost plus found directory, it means that particular directory is being used to is being mounted to some partition to access the data of the partition. So lost plus found you will find inside the directory, inside the inside whenever you mount a particular partition with one particular directory, inside that mounted directory you will find one folder by default with the name lost plus found directory. So this lost plus found directory will be there only in the mounted directory, not in the normal directory. So what is the use of this lost plus found directory? When the system crashes unexpectedly, suddenly due to some of the file fragments will be stored in the lost plus found directory. So this by using the FSCK file system checking, we can start the system if it is get crashed by using the lost plus found directory. So during this system setup, the FSCK, that is the tool, file system check tool, will check this directory and repair the damaged file system. So here it is written, this directory will appear only when the partition is mounted with a particular directory. So the partition is mounted means access with which directory. In that directory only lost plus found directory will appear, not in the normal directory. So this is about the overall structure of the Linux OS. So did you got some idea now where exactly what data will be stored? So here slash contain Linux OS, slash contain Linux OS, which is similar to C drive. The administrator name in Windows is administrator, whereas in Linux the administrator name is root. So root created data in Linux will be stored in slash root. All the rest of the user data will be stored in slash home. Slash boot contain Linux kernel, bootable file, and bootloader through which it will do the booting process. Booting means loading of the OS. Slash bin contain users command. So whatever commands present in slash bin can be executed or can be used by all user, including root. But whatever commands present in sbin, so those commands can be used only by root, not by any other user. USR contain installed application, and etc contain configuration file. Dev contain hardware devices information. Var contain log files. Lib contain library file. OPT contain third-party install application. Media is used to access the hardware devices. Mnt is used to access the partition. Temp file contain temporary file. Lost plus found is a mounted directory folder. So this is the overall structure of the Linux. So I hope now you understood where exactly what data will be stored. Is it clear? So once we have this knowledge, tomorrow we can proceed with the installation. So Linux OS can be done with the multiple partitions. So how to do that? Tomorrow I'll show you. And in this file, the link is also there from where you can download the VMware and also the OS. So everything I kept in this file. Then how we can operate this operating system, how we can log in, how we can open the all the basic things to all the till last day practical. Everything is there in this file. Okay. So with this, we are done with today's session. So I think one of our friend has made the payment. The others also please try to do as soon as possible. So once you are done with this, I'll send you this file. Along with that, they'll create one new link, and every day on your new link, all the videos, everyday video will be uploaded. Okay. So that see, we are not the machines. Yes, 1 hour session means sometime it will take more than on 1 hour, sometime it will take less than, depending upon the topic. Exact 1 hour means it is not like that. I hope you understand. So already I logged in at 9:35, something like that, but only one of our friend login. So I waited, then started the session around 9:45. Now it's already 10:45. Okay. So don't think like a machine. Sometime it will take less time, sometime it will take more, depending upon the topic. But whatever topic is given, that will be covered. That is important. Okay. Okay. So that's it for today. Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow. So same timing, 9:30. Is it fine to everybody? Before, because I need to tell to them 9:30 is fine.
Yes, sir. 9:30 is fine.
Okay. So those who did not make a payment, so make a payment and ping to my mail ID. I'll send you this practical step file as well as these two notes file. Okay. So before I close this session, do you have any doubts regarding today's session? You can please ask. Yes, any questions, any doubt regarding today's session, you can ask. Yes, any doubt, any questions, anyone, or can I close the session? No one is replying. Any doubt, or can I close the session?
I'm good, sir. No doubt.
Okay, so then shall I close the session?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. See you tomorrow. I'm closing the session.